Hey everybody, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
We are back, Dean, with more of our TEC Bytes.
Yes.
These are our segments where we regularly check in with some of the interesting stories and topics that you can discuss around the water cooler on your virtual meetings.
That's the intent.
Talk about with your customers, just to share some information and riff about some stuff that's going on in the news.
Absolutely. Sometimes we're not hanging out at the bar stool quite as often as we used to.
That's true.
So this is a little bit of that chat.
I wasn't even before the pandemic.
Oh, you
honestly.
weren't?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I'm too old for that anymore.
Come on now.
And bar stools?
You would travel to an event and, you go to an event and before then you're sitting around the bar, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're giving you ammo for those types of things.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if you are getting back out of it. Maybe you are doing some events. BlueStar's got some events going on. Maybe you're showing some of those. You want something to talk about? This will give you some of that ammo.
Absolutely.
Among today's topics, and I'm going to say up front, forgive my voice on this and the next podcast. We're doubling up today, and John's a little scratchy sounding.
A little scratchy? No.
Maybe it's sexier than usual. I don't know.
It's a nice resonance to your voice today.
All right. Well, among today's topics, we're going to talk about discussing pay with your colleagues. Always a sensitive subject. We're going to get into some stuff about social media stats.
Yes.
What's going on in the world of social media right now?
That connects with us because, right? It's marketing.
It does,
social media. We got
right. Some of the best and worst places to start a career. A little bit of an update on working from home. We're going to answer the question, what does Wi-Fi mean?
What?
And for some fun, we're going to talk about the top dance songs of all time.
There you go. Boom.
I mean, what else? What else could you want?
Wait, is there any technology in there? No, we're just kind of riffing.
We might squeeze a little bit of that in there somewhere. So.
Some tech in this.
It is the
TEC Bytes.
TEConnect podcast. Yeah, it is TEC Bytes. We'll figure out somehow to put some technology. Social media, that's technology.
Yeah. Good enough.
It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, so this is the seventh installment of TEC Bytes.
Yes. Well, see, we've got a lot, right? We just keep compiling these things, and news comes up. It's like, hey, wait a minute, we got to talk about this.
Dean and I can always find things to riff and talk about. And little secret sauce behind the scenes here. This is also a great way for us to fill in an episode when we just don't have a guest for that week.
It's hard. It's hard. This is a weekly show for crying out loud, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many subject matter experts are there in ADC?
Exactly. So sometimes we just got to fill in. Plus, Dean and I just love to get together. And
That's right. And hopefully we're amusing you along the way.
That's right.
And meaningful discussion here.
That's right. All right. Well, I'm going to start off here talking about this whole idea of discussing pay.
Oh, I can't wait for your take on this one.
So this is one of those things that's has been kind of debated and talked about in the news for a long time.
Yes.
And I feel like it's come up a lot more again recently, especially in light of the whole Great Resignation, people debating where they want to work, if they, if they want to work at certain places and why. And we've also got some younger generations that kind of thrive on transparency a little bit more. So there's been a lot of articles I've seen, again, over the last, year or so that are really getting into this. But in one particular I found on LinkedIn was kind of an interesting little deep dive into this. And they mentioned in particular, according to a recent bank rate survey, 42% of Gen Zers and 40% of Millennials have shared their salary information with coworkers, compared to only 31% of Gen Xers and 19% of baby boomers who said that they have done so. And I think that's kind of where a lot of this is coming from, is the younger generations apparently are more interested in having these conversations. They're more interested in sharing. They're more interested in being transparent and open about it. They're not as scared of the idea of talking about this as some of the older generations were. Plus, there's always been this kind of apparently, this stigma in the workplace of like, you don't talk about it. There's been some workplaces apparently that literally do say that. And honestly, I think there's no, from what I understand, there's no legal justification for not doing it. You can't tell people they absolutely cannot do it. It's just a lot of workplaces kind of had these unofficial policies of not allowing people to do it. And there's obviously a lot of debate about whether you should or shouldn't. Now, in connection with this, and the reason why I put this topic on here, because this actually is one that I think I've had on the list to talk about for a few months now. There was a post about this, not the same one that I'm going to share in the links. And by the way, as always, all these stuff we're talking about, I'll share links in the show notes. If you're watching us on YouTube, because YouTube is kind of a nightmare to put links into, there'll be one link in there to our show page on Podbean where all the links are going to be there. So if you want to follow along with any of these stories or read them yourself, please go check out those links. Well, in particular, I came across an older article on LinkedIn about this where they were kind of talking about this topic, and I'm not one who usually checks out the comments on stuff because comments are where nightmares.
Got the feedback going,
But I decided to check out the comments because I was curious what people had to say about this particular subject.
Yeah.
There was one in particular that I literally screenshotted from this one woman who responded that said basically the idea of would you share your your salary with coworkers? And she says never. In almost 30 years of working, I've never told anyone my salary. It's unethical and unprofessional. I was taught from day one of working, and it's been a policy at other companies that I've worked at. I believe it also shows management how trustworthy an employee is when they can maintain that level of discretion. I've had younger people ask me in the last 10 years, and it was pretty clear that they weren't taught that wages should never be discussed, and in most companies, it can get a person reprimanded. On a personal level, I think it's in bad taste to ask someone their wages. It's extremely personal. In any skilled or professional career, no two people have the exact same level of experience or knowledge, and wages are determined accordingly. Now, regardless of your opinion on what her opinion there is, and I'm not saying she's right or wrong necessarily. She had a justifiable opinion there for her reasoning there. But what was funny about this, so this is one of those comments that, as they say in the world of social media, got ratioed, meaning there was a lot more people commenting on it than liking it. Meaning they had a lot more to say about it than just check marking it.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting is I kind of was reading through that thread, and she was responding to a lot of comments, which again, dangerous to do. If you're going to give a comment that's inflammatory and then start commenting on everyone's comments on it, just starting these comment wars that just don't get you anywhere. At some point, it came out that she was actually an HR professional and had access to everyone's salaries in her company anyway.
Right.
To which I kind of said, well, then really you don't have a dog in this fight because you know what everyone makes. Why are you so adamant about this? It's a little bit hypocritical there.
Right.
So, but I was curious about your take on this, Dean. Is this something people should be discussing? Do you think there's a viable reason for it?
I don't know that you're going to like my answer. I mean, I see that where this generation is going with transparency.
Right.
I see it as whining. A little bit of whining. Well, here's one of the many items that popped into my head here. And I actually think it can have a negative impact. So I'm going to argue the negative impact that transparency and salaries can have. Here are just some general thoughts I have. Who generally makes more money in an institution or any organization, would you think?
Typically the people at the top.
Well, right.
Or the tenured people.
But typically, in my estimation, those are people who are working hard, are innovative, are proactive, are team players, are et cetera, right?
Well,
those are generally...
Maybe should be.
Huh? Well, it should be what?
Let's say it should be those people.
Oh, okay.
Is it always is the question.
Well, we don't know. Right. And I get that you're arguing for transparency for that reason. Right. But I can tell you that generally, my opinion would be those folks are the ones that are generally making more than other folks.
Right.
And the people that aren't generally making those are the people that are whining in the back saying, hey, whatever, it's generally, I don't know if it's their ego, I don't know if it's this cultural thing of whatever, but it can have a negative impact, right? If you don't see a path towards increasing your income through hard work and proactive and blah blah blah, and that there's just general evening of the field. See, I see transparency as being an evening of the field, and I'm arguing that can have a negative impact in some regards, and that would be one of them. To me, I mean, so there's always going to be discrepancies between what somebody makes along the way, and the other thing that I would throw on the table is that if you feel like you're not getting compensated in a way that's commensurate with the job that you're doing, well, go find another one and try to do that. But I have a different view, I think, of it than perhaps what this article
Right.
and maybe others would have.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my take on it.
So here's the thing. I won't say that I'm someone who's all about like, let's just go out and everybody blast their salaries out to everyone. You're not going to find mine blasted out there all over the place. I'm not going to sit here and reveal it on the podcast necessarily. I can't say that I wouldn't not have that conversation with someone if someone wanted to talk to me about it. And
Right.
if there was a good reason for them to want to discuss it, you know,
Sure.
especially if it was someone who felt like they were being dramatically underpaid and maybe was doing a job similar to mine and I felt like should be paid commensurately, you know, like maybe I wouldn't necessarily mind having
So
that
discretion,
conversation.
right?
Discretion,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
But I don't know that I'm going to post it.
No,
Yeah,
exactly.
in a one-to-one conversation, sure.
Exactly.
You know,
and I
right,
think
yeah.
that's kind of a little bit what we're talking about here. I don't think
Okay.
it's so much about, you know, everybody, like literally there's like just a list you can go find of everyone's
Right, you just
salaries
walk in, it's on the
somewhere.
bulletin board and everybody's list. Well, in government jobs, that is the case.
That's
I mean,
true,
you can
yeah.
find out the compensation
That's
of
true.
everybody. You know, right?
That's a
and
good
so
point.
there is the use case of this existing.
Right.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But I do think, you know, again, in this kind of weird place that we're in with people reevaluating their jobs and reevaluating their work and their life and all the balance between that. And plus when you get into things like inequalities when it comes to race, gender, age, the various ways that people can get discriminated against in the workplace and that can be unfortunately reflected in their salaries. But yes, to your point, though, it should be commensurate to people's work and their actual effort. However, we all know that isn't necessarily always the case.
True.
Unfortunately.
Of course, there's going to be absolutely. Right.
And I think
For sure.
that's and
For
maybe
sure.
that's kind of where
I was
this
making
is coming
general
from.
statements.
Yes.
Now, let me throw this out on the table. I think that this argument is moot at this point because there are so many online resources, salary.com. You can get a gauge of where you're at on your talent or how long you've been in your profession, et cetera, to understand where it is.
Yep.
I mean,
and it does,
and those are fully transparent, right? I mean, they're getting honest numbers from folks, and you can see, where am I? Am I in the middle?
Right.
Am I in the low end? Am I on the high end? Where am I? I think there's some validity. So why even have this conversation?
Well, and I think also, you know, hopefully this is inspiring people too to take a little bit more of a proactive role with their salary and their compensation and their worth. That if
true.
you feel like, hey, I'm doing a job that is
sure.
worth more than what I'm getting paid,
For sure.
that you speak up and that you say something about it.
That's
And I
right.
know that's easier said than done, but if you can, and if you're comfortable with doing so, do it. Because one, you never know when it's going to work, and if it doesn't, then maybe that's a sign that yes, you do need to go find something else. If you are able to demonstrate and go to your superiors and say, hey, look at what I'm doing. I know that I'm doing better work than a lot of my other colleagues.
Yep.
I also have a strong feeling or even know that I'm not getting paid commensurate to them. Let's have a conversation about
Sure.
that. And either it moves the needle and you get
Sure.
what you deserve, or it doesn't, and maybe it's time for you to go find
There
somewhere
you
else
go.
to work.
That's right.
The only thing
That's fair.
I will add to this conversation too is I am also though a big believer that we have reached the point where there is not much excuse for companies not to post at least a salary range for jobs when you are posting jobs. I can speak from experience from before I came to work here and my job previous to this. When I did extensive job hunting, was out there throwing out a bunch of resumes and and applying for positions. Got some calls about some that you go through the rigmarole of all about the role, and then you get to the point where you talk about salary, and they throw out a salary like, well, it starts at here, and we can max that at this, and it's like 20,000 less than you are willing to even deal with.
Exactly.
And that's where I go, why?
Yes, why did I just do
I
this?
should not have wasted my time even applying for this if I had
fair.
at least known that up front.
That's
so
fair,
I'm at the point where there's not, I can't see a justifiable reason. And again, I understand that some places are going to bring people in at certain salaries based on their experience versus whatever. But again, that can feel a little predatory too. If you're like, well, this person doesn't know any better,
Right.
and they don't have enough experience, so we can pay them much less than this other person. But you know, I just think there definitely should be more transparency in that when you're applying for jobs or looking for jobs. To know, or at least if you're not gonna reveal it, you know, in the application process, have that discussion first
up front
in the recruiting process. When you talk to somebody, one of the first things out of your mouth, if you're a recruiter or talking to someone, should be like, "Hey, I just want to level set. Here's what the salary range is for this. Before we go any further, is that going to be okay?"
That's fair. Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
maybe some good comes out of it, but hey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Dean. Something a little more lighthearted, so we don't get depressed about our pay.
All right. So my topic is, and by the way, I am the farthest thing from an expert of this particular topic, but it's one of those things.
You're not a clubbing guy?
No. Well, but it's one of those things that it rubs me the wrong way again. So the whole issue here is that so Rolling Stone which I'm on the fence of whether or not.
Rolling Stone has interesting lists. Let's put it that way.
I mean, right? So this is a Rolling Stone list of the top 200 dance songs of all time, right? So, and I think that everybody's got an opinion here because everybody, I mean, dance is just one of those ubiquitous things.
Right,
whether
right.
you went to a high school dance, whether you've attended a wedding, whether you've gone, I mean, right? I mean,
Well,
dance
let's be honest.
like,
How do you even define a dance song?
okay, well, so
that could probably have a
good
lot
question.
to do with this too.
In
Or
essence,
how did they define
this
it?
is how they defined it. In any song that ever got any one person moving in any perceptible direction is a dance song.
But
So,
okay, wait, hang on a second. Sometimes, like when I listen to Metallica, you know, or something that's a heavy metal or
Right,
hard rock
it's not
song,
dance.
I'm like, "Arr," you know, like I'm drumming along or
Yeah,
acting
but
like
that's
I'm
not dance.
I'm moving.
Well, that's true. But I would not
I know what
characterize
you
that
mean.
as
Okay,
a
I get
dance
it, I
song.
get it.
So anyway,
Moving with a
but
little
to
bit of
make
groove.
this list of
Yeah.
the 200 greatest dance songs of all time had to be part of a dance music culture.
Okay.
Which, yeah, and it's
Again,
more.
what does that mean? But
yeah,
all right.
it's a more specific world. But anyway, and maybe that's why I've got issues with it. So my biggest issue, and I'm not going to go down the 200 or whatnot, but. Here it is for me. Where would you put a Michael Jackson song in the top 200? To me, it would easily be in the top. I'm with you, Marco. It'd easily be in the top 10. I mean, the Jackson 5 produced ubiquitous dance songs. I mean, if you go to any wedding, any whatever, you're going to be dancing to a Michael Jackson song. The highest he got was number 57 on this list.
What song was that?
Don't Stop Till You Get Enough.
Okay.
Probably
Okay,
one of the
okay.
better Jackson, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can, that's definitely a dancey
Dude,
song.
you see, any karaoke you go into, Marco's got the groove already. Any wedding you go to, they're playing this song, even today.
Right.
Back when it was how is it 57? And then when you look at the people that were above it, have you ever heard of Omni Trio?
No.
You ever heard the song Renegade Snare?
I don't
Oh, well, that was really one of the top. It's like, I listened to the song, I'm like, never heard this. I mean, so maybe it's their dance music culture is the only out here. But if you're talking like the 200 greatest dance songs, I mean, I think that anyway, I got real issues with this list that Rolling Stone put out. So I'll give you the number 1, 2, and 3. Donna Summers was number 1. I Feel Love. I'm sorry. Everybody knows that one. Daft Punk, One More Time. That's a good one.
I will agree with that one.
And then Chick, Good Times, right? That's classic. Chic. I'm sorry. Yeah. Classic song in again played. So I'm not disagreeing with their top 3.
Right.
But how does Michael Jackson not make at least your top 20?
Yeah, I wondered, like, first of all, I thought, like, okay, is it because maybe people consider more of his stuff to be more of just R&B in general? Or is it some kind of backlash? I mean,
it could be the backlash. I'm with you.
It's hard.
I gotcha.
I admit I have a hard time reconciling my feelings.
We
about
all
Michael
do.
Jackson
We
these
all
days.
do.
I love the music, but I'm like,
as a piece
it's hard.
of art,
but yes, if you're going to be objective about it and just objectively pick the songs,
Yeah.
I agree. There probably could have been something a little bit higher on the list, if even just that particular song potentially top 20 there. So
and then some of the other ones that they had on there as well. I mean, I would have listed some of the ones that they had much higher than they did. And honestly, I felt so disconnected. I mean, there's maybe 10% of the songs I recognize. Right.
So
maybe it is this dance culture.
I was
going to
say, I felt the same. I didn't go through the whole list. I kind of like jumped to the top 20 and was going through those.
Yeah.
And you're right. There was maybe half of them that I actually recognized, if even that many.
Yeah.
And again, yes, I'm not a dance culture person. Like there's, like Daft Punk is probably, the closest to dance that I still listen to on a regular basis. I was into like, Crystal Method and Chemical Brothers for a little while there. I still like some of their stuff. But yeah, I'm probably not the target audience for dance music for the most part. So I figured that's probably why I didn't have a lot to judge here. But
I'm going to end on this. How does Kylie Minogue...
Was it Can't Get Enough of Your or not?
Can't get you out of my head.
Can't get you out of my head.
Yeah, that
catchy tune, but
way above Michael Jackson and Jackson 5. Anyway,
well, I will also point out,
yeah,
Rolling Stone has one of the worst website interfaces.
Totally
for
terrible
for checking these lists out.
Terrible.
I've noticed it before. I was going through a list of, I think, their top 100 videos or something of all time, and like it is a site that is slow as hell. The fan on my computer literally ramps up into overdrive whenever I run one of their sites. I don't know what it is about.
Because they're trying to load all this content.
Too much content.
Videos here, GIFs there. I mean, it's a nightmare.
That kind of tweaked my website design. The tick that I get about that stuff.
Fair enough. So let's get into the social media.
All right, let's talk about social media stats.
Yeah.
So this came from Wave, who I'm always on their email list for podcast related stuff, whatever. They're an interesting site that can help create snippets for podcasts. But they had a pretty interesting survey of our statistics come out called 2022 Staggering Statistics on Mainstream Social Media Usage. And basically, they were just kind of doing a rundown of how much people are using social media. I found some interesting stats here on the number of hours and the number of users and hours spent. So let's look at a couple of these.
Scary.
According to the 2022 Global Overview Report by Data Reportal, 4.6 billion people around the world actively use social media. That's more than half of the world's population at 58%.
Yeah.
Out of those 4.6 billion social media users, 424 million of them are new users who have just joined social media platforms in the last 12 months. According to the same report, 12 and a half trillion hours are spent online.
Is that trillion with a T, John?
Trillion with a T, which is a new milestone in internet consumption. The average time that users spend on social media is 2 hours and 27 minutes per day.
That's unbelievable.
If you are one of these people who ever feels guilty about the time you spend
that's unbelievable
doom scrolling Twitter or thumbing through Facebook or something, you probably are actually below the curve.
Well, I am. I'm way below that curve. I'm feeling old. I mean,
granted, I'm not a Facebook user anymore, so that helps. But still,
man,
that's a lot of time.
That's watching a movie every day.
Yeah.
Every single day. Yeah.
That amount of time spent on social media. And I don't know about you, but and granted, I know, we all check social media while we're working sometimes, but if you think about the free time you have outside of your work hours and whatever else life throws your way,
right?
How much of that are you wasting if you're spending 2.5 hours on social media? That's nuts to me.
Yes.
All right. So, of course, they also gave statistics on social media channels. It's no surprise, obviously, Facebook is number one at 2.9 billion monthly active users. The top 5 are YouTube. After Facebook are YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger. Find it interesting that 4 of those are owned by Meta and are all part of the Facebook dynamic there. So that was kind of interesting. TikTok obviously is pretty high on the list now. It's up to number 7 with 1 billion. I did find there were some stuff in here. I kind of feel like WhatsApp. Is that really a social media?
I think it is in other cultures.
Well, that's true.
Like
that's
in
China,
a very good point. I believe it is.
That's a very good point. A lot of other cultures
so.
do use it as kind of like social media and sharing a lot of information.
Yeah.
So I guess I get that. Yeah. So it was
but a lot of those I hadn't even heard of. QQ, what's that? No idea. QZone, no idea what that is.
Yeah. I guess some of these are probably foreign, I would assume. They're used more in other countries. So interesting list, interesting stats.
So I pulled out some things with my love for video.
That's right.
And I always kind of great. Were you going to go there?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So there were a couple things that let me just throw a couple of them out. 82% of all consumers traffic are all traffic is video based. Right. That's a 15% increase from just 3 years ago. 55% of people watch videos online every single day. 78% of people are watching videos online every week. So video is heavily consumed, through social and whatnot. Here you go though. This is no surprise. Men spend 40% more of their time consuming online video content compared to women. Can we just face it that men and women are wired differently? In some degrees, and there's one of them, right?
Well, I know I buck the trend there because I tend to be more of an audio, like it's the whole podcast thing.
Okay, let's go down the audio thing though. Let me hit you with the next stat. When watching videos online, 92% of consumers watch video with the sound off. That was shocking to me.
I guess that makes sense though, because especially when you think of social media feeds, and when you're scrolling through social media, a lot of the videos now, you can turn them off so there's not an automatic sound.
Right.
One, you don't want that. Like if you're in a place where you don't want sound bursting out.
Right.
And they usually will caption them so that you can just read along while you're watching. So I guess I get that. Like it is, but it also speaks a lot to the importance of one video itself, which, again, we've talked about on this show before, and we've joked about the fact that, like, we did this as a video podcast.
Right.
When it went against my grain of thinking, like, podcasts are audio thing, right? But then realizing, like, no, there's a lot of traction for video for a lot of reasons, beyond just the fact that a lot of people like video, but also because it makes for great content, when you're snipping it and putting it out there. People tend to stop and pay attention to it or notice it when they're scrolling through a feed. So I thought that was pretty compelling.
I thought it was too, and I mean, I get it, but to me that was a really, really high number of folks. So really an interesting survey. It just, to me, it just further emphasizes the fact that, oh my gosh, this is a monster that social media is, with all these people. 58% of the population now of the world is on some type of social format.
I will be interested in another 10 years to see what that list looks like of, like, the most popular ones. Like, do you think the meta stuff will still be at the top in 10 years?
I don't know. I mean, history would say no.
Probably not.
But you don't know, right?
I mean, if you would go back 10 years, I guess, Facebook's probably there still. Would that have been in 2012 still? I guess, probably would have at that point. Yeah. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll see.
All right, Dean, talk to us a little bit about starting a career.
Well, all right. Well, or if you want to move, right? Like if you need a new career or something like that, it's sometimes helpful to understand where physically you should be, right? So one of those surveys came out and said, what are your top cities to go to if you are going to start a career or maybe are thinking of moving into a different career. Spoiler alert here. So, we were just talking about compensation and stuff like that. So I guess if I'm feeling like I'm not getting compensated enough, I might have to move to Salt Lake City, Orlando, or Atlanta.
Salt Lake City
your
was an
top
interesting one.
three. Well, Salt Lake City is the number one. Now, what's their methodology on this particular list? They viewed 182 cities out there, but really they only did two key metrics, and I'm okay with this particular one: professional opportunities, and then they get into a vastness of what that means, and then quality of life. So those are really the two optics that they're using here to judge whether or not you should start this new career in one of these cities. Based on those two optics. So that's not terrible, right? Just those two. Did you have a problem with any of those?
No, I didn't. I thought that was all pretty straightforward, I suppose, compared to some of the other stuff where the methodology was kind of all over the place that we've done before.
Right. I mean, when you look at the professional opportunities, it was stuff like entry-level jobs, how many are available, how many 4-star companies are out there, what is the medium income growth rate. So this is one of those that I was like, okay, maybe I'm believing this one. But again, it was a little bit surprising that Salt Lake City, Orlando, or Atlanta, actually 3 of the top cities, top 10 were all in Florida. So Florida is like a state that if you want to start a career, seems to be a really good state to go to. Got to give a shout out to Cincinnati. We're number 25 on this list, so that's not bad. But then you look at the bottom 3, New York is like the almost last place. Shreveport, Louisiana. Okay, I don't know. I don't know about Shreveport, and then North Las Vegas. I always thought Las Vegas was like this boom town of places to start a career and stuff like that. Apparently, not so much anymore. So there you have it. If you're looking to start a new career, go to Salt Lake City.
There you go. Yeah. I did find interesting also, like you mentioned the Florida ones, and yet most of them ranked kind of mid-tier on quality of life.
Right.
Except Orlando. Orlando was still fairly high. It was number 14 on quality of life, so that wasn't too bad there. But like Miami and Tampa, for instance, were definitely a little bit lower. What I did find was interesting, because I always like to check this stuff too, is like the quality of life. The number 1 was Madison, Wisconsin, which comes in at number 16 overall.
Have these people ever lived in Madison, Wisconsin?
I mean,
it's really cold up in there. I love Madison, Wisconsin.
I guess if that's your thing, like if it's if it's a climate
6
you
months
can handle,
out of the year, it is cold, dude. Yeah.
Interesting list,
So quality of life being burrowed away.
Check out this link if you're thinking of making a move. And maybe you might find your next destination for a job. So.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. Any more else you want to add on that?
Nope, I'm good. Okay. That's it. Yep.
All right. So let's talk about Wi-Fi.
All right.
Now, you may have already looked at this ahead of time, but do you know what Wi-Fi stands for?
I admittedly had no idea what Wi-Fi stands for. Now, I don't know what it stands for.
Most people...
I would assume it was wireless something.
So most people assume it's wireless fidelity.
Right. Okay. There you go.
Well, apparently, it doesn't stand for anything.
What do you mean it doesn't stand for anything?
So I came across this interesting article from Tech Radar.
Wi-Fi means nothing.
No, it doesn't. That basically it had dug up an old interview with one of the founders of the Wi-Fi Alliance from 2005.
All right.
That basically pointed out that, like, the original, first of all, they said the original name for Wi-Fi was IEEE 802.11b direct sequence. Doesn't really roll off the tongue.
That's an engineer coming,
Hey,
not marketing.
Can I connect to your IEEE 802.11b direct sequence? Not something you're going to do. So they had a consulting firm come in and make suggestions for what to call it, and one of the suggestions was Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Not as an abbreviation for something, but just as a name, Wi-Fi.
Oh, I see. Because it's catchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It was a marketing gimmick. So they adopted it. And
brilliant.
apparently, the reason why people think of it as wireless fidelity and assume that's what it means is because the Wi-Fi Alliance themselves got tired of trying to explain to people that it was just a marketing thing, like a name they came up with. So someone at some point decided, like, we'll say it's wireless fidelity. And they created a tagline, the standard for wireless fidelity. And at some point, apparently, even eventually, the U.S. military started calling it that. So it kind of stuck, and everyone just assumed that was what it stood for. But in reality, it doesn't. And they kind of point out in this article, if you stop to think about it, the name doesn't make any sense either. Fidelity, in a technical sense, refers to how well a device can reproduce a signal. High-fidelity TVs, for example, can reproduce images that could be mistaken for the real thing. But Wi-Fi doesn't do that. It's just a way to connect devices to one another. You're not reproducing anything. So I just thought that was interesting. As one of those things, like
I had no idea.
I came across the
It was
article
just
that said,
made up.
Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi doesn't actually mean anything. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't mean anything? It's wireless fidelity. And I clicked on this and realized, like, no, they're right.
It could have been anything. It could have been Jaja, or it could have been you name.
It could have. I would
right?
love to know what the other guy. Apparently, there was 10 different things. At the
I would love to know what they
firm.
were.
I'm sure it's probably out there somewhere, but I'd love to know what the other suggestions were that
Yes.
we could have had as our way of saying Wi-Fi. Like, yeah, I want to connect to your yaya, or,
Right, yeah, or something like that.
Exactly.
It's what? No, I had no idea.
That's one of those fun little water cooler things.
That is,
I think
right.
you could,
Wi-Fi
you could
means
throw out.
nothing.
Yeah,
there you
exactly.
go. All right, so we're all struggling with this work from home, right? And
Struggling? I'm enjoying it.
Well, okay, we're not struggling. Questioning, wondering, where are the trends going and stuff like that. So the next one for me kind of stuck a little bit, and it seemed like this was a pretty legit survey. 25,000 Americans in the spring of this year conducted a survey about work from home. Found 58. The most striking figure to emerge out of the research is 58%. That's the number of Americans who reported having the opportunity to work from home at least one day a week. Right? So almost 60% of people. Think about the cultural change or the workforce change that has meant. 60% of the people now have the ability to work at least one day from home. 35% of respondents are saying they can work from home 5 days a week. So there's your delta, right? So 60% at least one day. 35% can still work 5 days a week from home. And what also makes these numbers particularly notable is that respondents worked in all kinds of jobs, even white collar, which is what everybody is expecting.
Right.
But even blue collar workers were responding to that as well. So that's pretty interesting, right? I mean, it's just again, it just gets to this commentary of where are we? What is the work from home environment going to be? Especially kind of coming out of the pandemic. I think it's pretty well. Right in America, like we're done.
It's here,
yeah.
Which did you expect that? Like, because I know we talked about this a lot early on. Like, I think some of our earliest episodes we were talking about this whole thing.
All right.
And I know the big debate was when this is quote over, which again, pandemic over is a whole other thing. But when we were at least to the point where we didn't feel like we had to be at home. Did we think this was all going to come to an end, or that it would still remain? Yeah. And I think I was more on the side of I think we've hit enough of a fundamental change that it's not going to go away.
I would agree.
Especially the longer the tail went, like the longer more people worked from home, and the more and more they got comfortable with it, and the more businesses realized, hey, we can still be a solid, profitable, well-oiled working business with our employees working from home. It felt like you got to the point where you couldn't go back.
Right.
Like it was going to be hard to tell people like, nope, you all suddenly have to come back to the office and we're just not doing this anymore. How did you feel about that?
Well, I mean, right? I mean, I always thought it would be a hybrid is where we would land, and I think that that's kind of where the world is landing. Some kind of, because there's benefits to being in the office. There's benefits to being at home on a personal level. Everybody likes the autonomy and working from home, but from a workforce and from getting business done and camaraderie and all the things that come with the benefits of being in a workplace. Actually, there was an interesting Wall Street Journal article that really kind of dove into. They were making the cultural argument that we got to get back into the office because putting people in their homes, isolated, not interacting. When you think about all the things that would happen in a work environment, not just the camaraderie, but just the learning, the ability to react to other people, understand how other people are on political issues, on mundane things. It's just we're missing that, and when you take that away, what happens? To an isolated community is everybody becomes fracture-sided and even more polarized. So I mean, it was really an interesting article. Basically, this lady, I forget her name, she was arguing we got to get back. We got to get back in the office to some degree and quickly, because it's all going to melt down if we don't. So anyway, very interesting. So at the end of the road, I always felt it would be some kind of hybrid and a little bit more flexibility, because those companies that were very, very stringent about it, there's just a little bit more flexibility built into the system now. So there you go. Yeah,
and I think
but a little bit more now, some stats to back it up. Because you don't know. It's like, well, what is the rest of the world doing? Well, 35% are still 5 days a week. Yeah.
And I think that's what it came down to for me too, is the idea that the flexibility is there.
Right.
That I think more businesses than I expected. I'm more surprised. I'm surprised by how many businesses have, again, that 58% stat. The fact that more than half of companies are flexible enough to say, hey, we will allow this to happen at least one day a week, which I think was maybe a little bit more than I expected. Again, I thought it would, I thought it was kind of going to be here to stay to some extent.
But you thought we would go back.
I thought, well, not like en masse go back, but I thought more companies would be resistant to it and eventually push back. And maybe that still could happen in the future.
I mean, right? We could be a year or two down the road. You might have a little bit more of a swap. No, we got to bring people, everybody.
Right,
once the pendulum starts going back the other way, I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe, but I think, I'm interested in where it's at for now, and I'm pleased with it. It's,
sure.
I actually I feel like I'm more productive now than I probably was in coming to an office for the most part.
Yeah.
But again, I also do enjoy. Obviously, we got to come in here to do this. I do enjoy the opportunities when I do get to go in and meet with my coworkers. So
absolutely, yep.
All right. Well, hey, you kind of mentioned the topic earlier about where to work. Well, let's talk a little bit about millennials and where they're landing, because this was kind of an interesting article to me. A study that the AP News published this, millennials didn't stray far from where they grew up. So this was an interesting study that they broke down here that basically found that, here's the stat here, by the age of 26, more than 2/3 of young adults in the U.S. lived in the same area where they grew up. 80% had moved less than 100 miles away, and 90% resided less than 500 miles away. So migration distances were shorter for Black and Hispanic individuals compared to white and Asian young adults, and the children of higher income parents traveled farther away from their hometowns than those of less wealthy parents, according to the study, which I feel like when you get into the breakdown like that, it kind of makes a little more sense. But it is interesting that, and granted, I know people, you can probably crack your jokes about the millennials, like not being able to, break the ties with their parents, whatever. But, it is interesting that you're finding, and I guess also this is interesting to me because I feel like we very much live in an area where, when you come from kind of, or have, some rural or small town areas around you, there's always that joke of the folks that just don't get out of their hometown. They stay there their entire lives. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty much been in this, northern Kentucky tri-state zone for most of my life. I moved my parents out to Colorado for like 4 years in the late 80s. But other than that, I've pretty much been in this entire area most of my life, within probably a good 30-mile radius or so the whole time. So I mean, but it's interesting to see that younger adults who do tend to have a little more autonomy and a little more desire to get out and about and explore and try new things, that maybe we did in our youth, where there was a more of an attitude of like, well, you follow in your parents' footsteps, and you do what they did, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yet they're still choosing to kind of stay close to home at the end of the day.
Those family ties, those roots.
Yeah.
I think that's really hard to buck. It's just like a natural type of a thing. But to your point, I mean, of any generation that's had the ability to do it, it would definitely be this one. I mean, they're having kids later in life, a little bit more time, between the child bearing years or whatnot, and so you would think that folks would flock, or at least to a certain degree, especially out of and I guess some of the trends show that like older cities up in the Northeast. Like if you go to Phoenix, there's nobody there that's like grew up in Phoenix.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. There are some cities that are like that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think you see that in Texas. I would imagine, a lot of those cities that, I mean, San Antonio 30 years ago is like a podunk. Well, I want to say podunk, but really small. Now it's like one of the largest cities in America.
Right.
So, and all that's probably through that. So it is interesting to see that, but hard to buck those natural
They mentioned a lot about like the commuting zones being an issue with this too. The fact that like, the way a lot of especially cities are kind of organized and the suburbs around them, that you can't get too far out without being outside of a commuting zone to a potential job. And again, that's one of those things here in the tri-state. I feel like we kind of understand that, there's a certain realm you can go to that if you go too far beyond it, you're going to be out of the radius of a lot of jobs that you might potentially work. Now, granted, again, that's where maybe the whole work from home thing might, influence this. And I'm curious again, if we take this poll again and do this study in another 10 years, if we've kept up the whole work from home thing, maybe that might change things a little bit.
Maybe.
If that's a factor.
Yeah.
That may not be the only factor. Obviously, familial ties and connections with where you grew up and your family might have a lot to do with it. But if it's strictly about work and the opportunities to work and living somewhere that you don't have a ridiculous commute, maybe that changes if more people are able to work from home full time instead. So that might have some influence.
I'm gonna weave a thread for you here then and pick up on this, because there's been an urbanization of population here recently. And when you think about it, when you go into the smaller cities in America, what used to be out there? Manufacturing, or the industries that supported manufacturing. I mean, you drive through any small town, Ohio, and that's what it is. They would have a plant somewhere, and that fed the community, and call it a 75-mile radius around that plant. I mean, that's where people worked and things of that nature. So my next story that's connecting is actually maybe a little tech-driven, gets around the whole idea of boosting our the U.S. chip manufacturing capability, right? So Intel announced that it was named lead to the first phase of what the Pentagon, so the angle here is that the government obviously is taking a step back and saying, I think we need to start internalizing some of this chip making, back here in America. So they created the Pentagon's Rapid Assured Microelectronics Prototypes Commercial, or the RAMPSI program.
Leave it to the government to come up with a good acronym.
That's an acronym for you, which aims to establish a domestic manufacturing ecosystem for vital electronics. Oh, do you think that's important? I mean, really? So do you think
why did it take a pandemic to make that happen?
Exactly. why are we, clearly the pendulum had swung way too far with globalization and outsourcing and things of that nature, but we need this tech to keep us sovereign. So, I'm in favor of this, but in what I'm hoping, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, when we start doing chip manufacturing and bringing some of these manufacturing things back into America, maybe you're going to start seeing, populations go back out to these centers. And because, not only is there, Intel's building a huge plant in between Columbus and Cincinnati. It's literally in the middle of a cornfield, and that's going to, the industry around there will thrive, and then that'll bring other suppliers that supply that. I'm hoping it's a really good thing that comes out of these types of things. So I was, it's good.
But you're right. It's interesting to think about that, because I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and we were on our way to Myrtle Beach, and somewhere in the Carolinas, I don't know where we were very much driving through kind of, I think it was as we got closer, so, to the beach area, driving through what seemed like kind of just like small towns, little highway, and randomly came across a big Thermo Fisher plant.
There you go.
And I mean, and again, like I said, it was one of those things.
It's probably huge, right?
It was huge. Not in the middle of a big city, but I'm sure that there are a lot of people in those surrounding towns that were working at that place.
Oh,
I'm sure it was
100%,
a huge job supply.
They need metal fabrication for the factory. Something goes down or whatever. They need all these little industries feed into those types of things, and which has kind of been hollowed over the last 20, 30 years. So
hopefully you're right about that, and people can start spreading back out a little bit more.
Let's bring it back. There you go. Yeah. So anyway, that was my TEConnect, or at least my last story there.
All right. Well, hey, that does it for our TEC Bytes.
Yes.
Hopefully you got some good little nuggets that you can take out to your coworkers, your customers, stuff to talk about. Hey, if you want to talk about some of that stuff with us, reach out to us. We always want to hear from you. First of all, as always, if you are watching us on YouTube, hit the like button for this episode. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss our content. Leave us a comment. If there's one of these topics we talked about that you have a thought on, go down, type in a quick comment. Don't start a comment war necessarily, but, give us your thoughts, your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Of course, if you listen to us on any of our podcasters of choice, especially if you're on Apple or Spotify and you have the opportunity to leave us a review, please do that. A 5-star rating and review goes a long way to helping other customers or other listeners find us. And also, we just want to hear from you. We
what if they got an idea, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
If you have an idea for the podcast, we want that too. If you go to the show notes, there is always a link there to submit your ideas for the podcast. Maybe it's a TEC Byte topic that you want us to talk about.
Just about to go there. And if you have one, we'll dial you up and talk to you about your TEC Byte.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. We'll let you join in on the pod. So, okay, we don't have to do that.
We don't have to. But if
you're gun shy and you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But if you want us to talk about it, we'll do that for you too. And hey, just for sending us ideas for TEC Bytes, for the podcast in general, anything that you have an idea that you want us to talk about on the show, even if we don't get around to using it, we will send you a TEConnect podcast T-shirt.
Bingo. There you go. Free swag.
Who doesn't need a new T-shirt?
That's right. Yeah. And a really nice one.
It is. It's a very nice one. It's very soft. It's comfortable. It's one you're actually going to want to wear around.
Yep.
It's not like too glaring about a podcast too, so you're not going to have to like.
It's subtle. It's a good shirt.
Yeah, you're not going to have to explain it to everybody you come across. Right. It's just a nice, comfy T-shirt. You'll appreciate it. So
that's good stuff. Yep.
And of course, as always, if you want to stay connected with us, you can find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. This is where we normally do our value to the VAR segment. And as always, I'm going to ask, are there any takeaways from these stories you think that are valuable to our VARs?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the marketing, the angle with the social media and the stats. If you are in marketing, if you're a reseller, video is where it's at. If you don't have a video component to your marketing strategy, some of those stats that we laid down, go read the article. There's even more stats that will make you even more of a believer that having some type of video capacity, even if it's just shooting videos on your cell phone or whatnot, it doesn't have to be a sophisticated high-end production.
That's right.
But video speaks volumes and people are watching it. So
I was going to say the same thing. That is, I think, probably the top takeaway from any of these is video is a huge, important part of social media these days. It's an important part of getting noticed when people are flipping through their feeds. So if you are doing any kind of social media promotion at all, wherever it's at, if you can incorporate some video, and it could be something as simple as when you're out doing an install, let's say you're working with one of your customers, you're helping install some technology, have someone there, taking some video of it.
Absolutely.
And throw that up and just say, hey, look what we did today for
idea.
Such and such customer. This was a lot of fun. They put together a great solution. Can't wait to see how it works for them. Something like that.
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff that people will stop and pay attention to, especially if you do one of those cool videos where you're running it fast, to like show the passage of time kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. You might need a little bit of video editing quality there for that, but
you can do so much.
You can probably do it on your own. Honestly, again, your iPhone, your smartphone, Android phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those things have a lot of that stuff built in to easily take care of that. So good value to the VAR there. All right, let's wrap up as always with our What's Tech Connecting with You. This is where we get to talk about something in the world of science, tech, innovation that has caught our eye. What's Tech Connecting with You this week, Dean?
Well, so I stumbled across this organization. Have you ever heard of Y Combinator? It's like an association that twice a year they fund $500,000 per company on early stage startups. And so they had, actually this was last year, they had one of their spring festivals where they highlight a bunch of startup companies. That's what this organization does. They try to feed young startups. And oh, by the way, let me give you a list of some of their successes. Airbnb, Dropbox, Instacart, Coinbase, DoorDash, Stripe, all those companies came through, and the list is like
that's a pretty successful list. Yeah.
If you go, I had no idea this Y Combinator existed, but now when I read, I'm like, oh my god, that's pretty cool. So
that's the company you want on your side, apparently.
No doubt, right? I mean, if they invest, if you're one of the two that they invest in a year, you got some pretty good.
You're pretty much locked in. Yeah.
So anyway, I was reading through the list of folks that, and I think there was like 100. No, there were 377 startups that were in from 47 different countries that were highlighted during these 2-day spring festival. But a couple of them were in our world. Milky Way AI. No, it's not. They're not building a supercomputer to scan the stars. Instead, it's building a computer intelligence to scan shelves. So we might see this in our world, right? Yeah. So that's their whole tech is around, the ability to scan shelves and check where goods are in stocks and stuff like that. Now, they're pretty small right now. They only have, at this time, they only had $11,000 in monthly revenue. But there's one of those, little companies out there that is trying to do something, make a play in the retail space. The other one I wanted to throw at you is SliceQ, which is basically some startups are building delivery robots and ordering systems that include new tech. SliceQ, this one's a good one, wants to take a very old tech and refurbish it into a modern world. So basically what they do is they take orders over the phone and convert it into an order. So you can call. Remember when do you remember ordering a pizza 25 years ago? Yeah. You would call a number and they somebody like, hey, Jack's Pizza, what do you want? Right. Yeah. I want a large pepperoni.
I don't want to talk like this. I don't really understand anything you're saying.
SliceQ will convert that into an actual order so people can still phone. Now,
so are you talking to a person or are you just calling into
you're
an
just
AI?
calling in. You're calling into AI. And it's going to translate the whole thing and turn it into an order for people.
But is it going to be one of those things where it says tell us your phone number, and you do it. It's like, okay, was it? And it repeats the wrong number, and you're like, no, it was 859.
I don't know. I haven't
you're
interfaced
yelling at your phone
with SliceQ.
I'm hoping they're better.
I'm hoping it's a lot better than that. They've already they're conducting about $200,000 a month in transactions, so it's up and running. It's
there's some labor savings right there.
There's
not
some
having to
labor savings
a call center necessarily.
So a couple of them. Now, I don't think either one of these companies won that coveted $500,000 award. But hey, I'm going to start watching out for this Y Combinator on a yearly basis to see what's going out there. It was a fun read just to see all these innovative things that people are doing.
Man, you and I are pretty intelligent guys. But do you ever hear about some of these startups and go like, man, everyone's so much smarter than us,
right?
Why didn't I think of that?
And they're younger, and they have, they don't have the burdens of kids and families, and they can they can spend a year.
What it is?
Let's see what happens here.
It's something that we actually all do. All of us at some point sit around at some point and say,
the $1 million idea.
Wouldn't it be nice if blah blah blah?
Yes.
And then we just we talk about it, that'd be cool. And then we don't do anything. We turn the football game back on, or go get another beer.
That's right.
Go to bed. Yeah. The difference is the folks that get that idea and go, let's do it. And start and burn a passionate lifestyle around making that happen.
God love these SliceQ people. They got a passion for turning that old fashioned phone conversation into an order. I mean, I
could get behind that because one of my whole I'm not someone who likes to talk on the phone to people.
Right.
And for some reason, I don't know why, it's one of those things I've always had a hang up about my entire life. Mm-hmm. And the idea of, but I have a feeling if I could talk to a robot, to an AI, and it's not an actual person, I'd feel so much better about that. I don't know why. It's just that feeling of I'm always...
You'd rather talk to a cold, hard machine.
I think I've always been in that mindset of if there's a person on the other end, I'm going to sound like a moron at some point. And I hate sounding like a moron.
I see,
says the guy who probably sounds like a moron on this podcast on a regular basis. But
anyway, what's TEConnecting with you then?
All right, so I mentioned this on our last pod that for Prime Day this year, I decided to indulge into some smart home stuff.
You did
I
the
mentioned
camera.
The doorbell camera that I got into. Well, there were two other things that I hadn't tried out yet at the time that we recorded that.
Okay.
And I have since installed and played with. One is the Nest thermostat.
Okay. So I'm not sold on this. Sell me on it.
I have wanted to do the smart thermostat thing for a while, mostly because my thermostat, now this is funny because we built our house new, and if you ever want to learn about how many shortcuts builders take,
just build a house.
Just build a house, and you will find out how much stuff that they half-ass as
Did
much
they
as
give
possible.
you the old school thermostat that you actually?
No, it
have
wasn't
to-
that old.
Oh,
It was
okay.
it was a digital one, but I've had nothing but buggy issues with it. Like, you know, I had to do that thing where I had to jerry rig the batteries with a piece of foil to make sure that the connecting was working properly, whatever, to keep this thing working. So I've been for a long time thinking, like, I need to replace this thing, and if I'm going to replace it, I might as well do a smart thermostat.
All right, so you got the Nest.
So I finally got the Nest. It was a
And?
good deal. I got it, and it was fairly easy to install. Actually, the hardest part was uninstalling the old one.
Oh, wow.
Getting the old one
Okay.
off my wall and getting the wires out of it was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hardest part. The installing a Nest itself was super easy. It's very easy to activate and install once you get it on there with your phone. The controls are nice and simple. I do actually kind of like it. It's not something that's like changing the entire world for me, but there's definitely a lot to enjoy about it. Just the simplicity of using it and
Alright.
using my app to control the temperature.
Okay.
One of the things I like about it is the idea, like, you know, I like when I'm not at home being able to, like, you know, dial the temperature up a little bit so I'm not wasting energy with heating or cooling my house when I'm
Isn't
not
it supposed
there.
to be smart? Doesn't it like know
It
your?
can.
it's-
You can have
it's
like
supposed to, like,
presence.
learn your
Yes.
behavior?
You can have like
Okay.
presence detector stuff, which, granted, as someone who works from home a lot of the time,
Yeah,
it's
right.
kind of doesn't make sense for me to do that because,
okay.
you know, for days when both my wife and I are both completely out of the house and there's no one there at any time or few and far between. So I've got it more set up just comfortable temperatures, but I also did set something up where I can put it in an away mode. So if I'm leaving, I can just put it in, I can go to my phone. If I forget or something, go to away mode and it'll just dial the temperature up to a certain point and, you know,
Gotcha.
and then I can, on the way back or as soon as I get home, change it back again. But yes, there are a lot of little cool bugs and features you can do.
Yeah.
It's very simplified. It's very easy. And I will say also, it clearly like reads temperature a little bit differently in my home than my previous thermostat.
Okay.
Because the settings that I used to have my thermostat on were much higher than where I have it now.
Oh, really?
And I feel like it's a lot more comfortable now with more comfortable, but like I find it interesting that what like 75 was comfortable before.
Yeah.
And now I got to do 73 for it to be comfortable.
I see.
So like the temperature sensing must be a little bit different and probably a little better, I would say,
Probably.
honestly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So I like it, you know, not, you
All
know,
right, let's
like,
see what
it's-
happens to your energy bill, though.
That's true. I will
If
keep
it's
tabs on
burning up
that
a little
and
bit
let you know
more.
with that. Ideally, it's going to help out a little bit. So
We'll see.
All right. Then the other one was a smart vacuum. Christoph
yes.
mentioned that in our last
Yes, he
pod.
did.
He got
Yeah.
one of those. So we got one too. And I mentioned kind of that I had a funny story starting with that. Originally, we got one. My wife picked one out, and we bought one. This is something she's wanted to do for a while now. She found one that was a nice discount, not like an iRobot or you know whatever. Like that stuff's still ridiculously expensive.
Right.
Like and for what it is, you don't need anything that expensive. I don't think.
Yeah.
And we got one that would only connect to the 2.5 gigahertz Wi-Fi.
Oh.
Now,
all right.
that shouldn't normally be a problem. I have Google Wi-Fi, like
Yep,
Google
right.
Nest Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Nest.
And that platform doesn't have separate channels for 2.5 and 5
Okay.
gigahertz.
All right.
They merge them together and just let devices pick
right.
which one that they want to use. And
Yeah.
it makes sense for smart home devices because they could be far away from the signal and might
Right.
need the 2.4, which spreads out farther. If you
Yep.
don't know that stuff, I'm sure anybody listening knows that stuff. So it made sense, but this first vacuum we got would not find my network at all.
Uh-oh.
Just wouldn't.
Yeah.
So we had to return it. I
right.
got another one,
Yeah.
and this one did just fine. This one
Okay.
picked it up and found it just fine. So we got it all working, and we've used it several times now. I really like it. It's
Yeah. Is it loud?
It's actually not too loud. Like you
Okay.
can, there's like different settings for the fan or for the suction power you can
Oh,
set
really?
it on. And I ran it yesterday, for instance, while I was working. I had it run just in the kitchen, the living room. Honestly, I barely heard it most of the time that it was up there. If it had come back to my office, it might have been a little bit louder. Honestly, the loudest thing it does is when it goes back to the base unit
Yeah.
and like
Clunk, clunk.
empties out.
Yeah. Oh,
and it's like
gotcha.
to like empty everything out into the container.
You got one of those. Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
so
Yeah, yeah.
that part's loud. Otherwise,
Can
it's
you
not,
draw
it's
its
not terribly
path?
loud.
Can it? Okay.
You can like it like when you first unleash it, it literally
Create
maps
borders.
your entire house. It'll segment rooms based on going through doors. You can do additional segmenting if you want to. You can set no-go zones. Like we have some rugs that are too thick for it to handle,
Got it.
so I've
So
set
don't
those
go
as
there,
no-go
yeah, right.
zones. And, or you can pick like, all right, I just want you to do this room and this room today. You can set schedules if you wanted to.
I'm down with all that stuff. But so we got one, but it was the first, like some of the first generation stuff. And so it was very clunky.
Right,
it was very loud. We have a lot of hardwood floors, but anyway, it was very loud, and it would just it just runs into walls. It's not smart. It's smart in the sense that it'll keep going down a path until it runs into something,
right.
and then it kind of turns around.
Right.
So we were like, no, this isn't the best experience. So maybe I'll re-up.
When
and
it was
try.
First mapping, it was a little bumping into stuff. And figuring
okay.
stuff out. But since it's mapped it does seem like it knows its way around a lot better than before.
That's fair. That's fair.
Although, like, you can obviously, if you change something around or leave something in one place or move something, like it might have to readjust a little to that. But I will say, like I said, I ran it yesterday and I was surprised by how quick and efficient it was.
Look at you. You got this tech house going now.
I seriously, I know.
Video doorbell. You got
suddenly
temperature.
Well, again, I'm there
cleaning.
most of the time. I might as well,
You don't have Rosie the robot yet, or
no? My wife wants that. Trust me. She's all about the RoboMaid. She's like RoboMaids happen. We're getting one. So.
Fair enough.
All right, that's what's tech connecting with us, folks. Until next time, make sure that you find a interesting way to market the name of your company with a name that everyone wants to find some kind of acronym for.
Wi-Fi.
Like Wi-Fi. Maybe fund some early stage startups, buy some smart home devices, and as always, folks, please stay connected. The TEConnect podcast is brought to you by ELO. Purpose-built for point-of-sale, the ELO E-Series 2 offers a 15.6-inch touchscreen display, Intel's 9th-generation Celeron processor, and an integrated expansion hub to connect the peripherals you need. We're just talking about Intel chips.
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Maybe the next time you buy one of these, the chip will come from a local manufacturer. From cash drawers and printers to barcode scanners and payment devices, there is connectivity to cover it all. For added flexibility, the E-Series 2 offers models with Windows 10 or no OS, providing businesses the best solution to customize for their environment, covered by a 3-year warranty.
Nice.
A lot of things aren't covered by warranties that long.
I know, right? Especially a 3-year
Everything's
warranty.
like a year at best, if you're lucky at this point
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
good for you, Elo.
There you go.
To learn more, contact your BlueStar representative. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Zebra. Mission critical doesn't compromise.
No.
Right?
No compromise.
And neither do Zebra print engines.
Ooh, nice.
Keep your customers' operations at peak performance with the rugged ZE511 and ZE521 print engines, intelligently engineered to make work easier. I'm all about making work easier.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean,
who-
right?
I've never met someone who doesn't want their work to be easier.
Make it harder.
Yeah.
No. We need easier work.
These 4 and 6-inch options are the replacements for the current ZE500 print engine and offer a number of enhancements. The ZE511 and 521 provide fast print speeds for all metal construction for demanding 24/7, 365 operations, but these essential workers offer far more reliability. Essential workers, it sounds like these printers need to unionize, right?
They're essential workers.
That's
yes.
right.
Yes, they are.
With Zebra's exclusive industry-leading Print DNA software suite, the ZE series are easy to set up, manage, maintain, and secure on-site or remotely. Users can leverage onboard analytics to predict and schedule maintenance to prevent unexpected downtime. It's starting to sound like my smart vacuum.
There you go, right?
Scheduled stuff you can do.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a little smarter than that. See printer status at a glance and change settings quickly using the large full-color LCD touch display. Troubleshoot remotely and swap out the modular drive for servicings to keep lines moving. Change print heads in seconds with the single socket quick tab release.
Nice.
This thing sounds super easy to use.
Yes.
Who knew print engines could be fun? Print Plus, users can add RFID encoding and connectivity where needed and be ready for tomorrow's technology with evolving capabilities.
Holy moly.
That's
what
impressive.
more do you need?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Push the limits with the print engine that's ready for today and tomorrow. Check out the link in the show notes for resources like spec sheets, selling guides, videos, and more.